Hello, hello, everyone who's joining us. We'll give it a second here before we get started. Let people filter in. Hope you're having a good penultimate calm day. All right, numbers are still trickling in. And it looks like our captioner is here, which is wonderful. All right, so welcome everyone. We'll get started in a moment here. My name is Moya. I am the moderator for this session, and I'm so excited to have Patrick Tomlin, Jonathan Bradley, and Max Ofsa with us today, presenting on professional development, managing student employees for career growth and service innovation. So a few reminders before we get started. This session is being recorded. And if you would like captions, please go ahead and click that closed caption button at the bottom of the Zoom window. And thanks in advance to Chris for providing these for us. Please use the Q&A feature also at the bottom of the screen for any questions that you have. You can enter those anytime. You can do it with your name or anonymously, and there'll be about 10 to 15 minutes to address any questions that come in. You're seeing links being dropped in the chat now by Shanti, who is our technical expert today. She'll be monitoring the chat as well as taking care of any tech issues that may or may not arise. Some of those links include our collaborative resource document. So as you're listening, if you hear of anything that reminds you of a reading, podcast, video, or any other resource, please feel free to jump into that Google Doc, add a suggestion to the session. But just be aware that it is a Google Doc, so there's only so many people who can be in it at the same time, so exit out of it if you're not actively using it, please. Finally, please be sure to abide by our conference code of conduct. And with that, I am going to turn it over to our presenters.
All right. Well, hello, everybody out there in Zoom land. I hope you are enjoying the conference, which I've found to be delightful and thought-provoking so far. As I hope our title makes clear, and I guess I should give credit where credit is due, or blame, depending on your perspective, to my co-presenter here, Max Ofsa, for coining the term professional development. You're set for life, right? With that. No. But hopefully our title at least indicates that our focus today is going to be on the ways in which we have sought to harness, to enhance, and foster the already great creativity and talent of our student employees in a way that might also facilitate their career growth and career plans, while also hopefully creating an environment for sustained and sustainable innovation in our service models in the process. So introductions, my name is Patrick Tomlin. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am an assistant dean and director of learning environments here at the University Libraries at Virginia Tech.
And I am Jonathan Bradley. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm the assistant director of studios and innovative technologies here at the University Libraries, Virginia Tech.
And I'm Max Ofsa, pronouns he, him, his as well. I'm the manager of two of our studios, the prototyping studio, which is a kind of higher ed makerspace, and a 3D scanning studio where we digitize 3D objects. And I also work at the Virginia Tech University Libraries.
All right. And so before we dive in, we just wanted to acknowledge that as employees of Virginia Tech, I've displayed our land acknowledgement and labor recognition statement here. We wanted to acknowledge that we live and work on the Tutelo Monacan people's homeland, and we recognize their continued relationships with their lands and waterways. We further acknowledge that legislation and practices like the Morrill Act from 1862 enabled the Commonwealth of Virginia to finance and found this university through the forced removal of Native nations from their lands, both locally and in Western territories. We understand that honoring Native peoples without explicit material commitments falls short of our institutional responsibilities. Through sustained, transparent, and meaningful engagement with the Tutelo, Monacan peoples, and other Native nations, we commit to changing the trajectory of Virginia Tech's history by increasing Indigenous student, staff, and faculty recruitment and retention, diversifying course offerings and meeting the growing needs of all Virginia tribes and supporting their sovereignty. And lastly, we must also recognize that enslaved Black people generated revenue and resources used to establish Virginia Tech and were prohibited from attending until 1953. Through the institutional and individual commitment to Ut Prosum, which is our university motto, that I may serve, in the spirit of community, diversity, and excellence, we commit to advancing a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. So here's what we're going to talk about for the next several minutes. Most of what I have to say is really meant to serve as a sort of 40,000-foot introductory frame to open up space for what Jonathan and Max are going to talk about, which is admittedly the more exciting, but also at times messier and complex process of working one-on-one with student employees and teams of students. So in the process, we'll cover the still sort of evolving infrastructure that has been developed around training and project-based learning and student assessment. These range from internships to a studio's network knowledge base. And we'll cover mistakes, of which there might have been a few along the way, and lessons that we have learned from them in the process. And then finally, if there's time, we'll touch on future directions. We plan on anticipating taking like the utilization of e-portfolios and a burgeoning number of industry partnerships. Since our focus, and since this presentation really centers our students and their experience, we thought that we would let them speak first. So this is Katie, Angela, and Jared, 3 students that work with Max in our prototyping studio.
I started working here in the studio when I was essentially looking for a job and then on Handshake, and I was looking through all the options, and then one that interested me the most was the 3D printing studio, because I just thought, I always think 3D printing is like really cool, and I said, wow, being able to work in a space like that was really cool.
So I was connected to the studio through just somebody who works with the honors program that I'm in, who used to work for the library studios, and he just recommended the studios.
I wanted to come here to like increase my ability to like think and problem solve, and I think that this job has done like a great job at it. I think some of the most important skills like I've learned over time here is like how to adapt and how to like be able to overcome different types of problems and what to do when you don't really know the answer to those problems.
Working in this job is how I learned to solder, how I learned definitely just a lot of basic like assembly kind of things, and definitely a lot more about 3D printing.
As like an architecture major, it's like this job has helped me a lot in like broadening my like creativity, because I'm like, oh, like the laser cam that we have, like although we have a laser cam like in the studio, seeing the projects that like Jared does is like insane, because he's like always on like acrylic, and I'm like, I never thought of doing that myself. So that's like really that's inspiring me, like, oh, maybe I should do this one day.
I would say the things that I think will help me in the future is how to interact with people in a workspace. I think interactions in a workspace definitely help to get stuff done a lot quicker.
I'm an industrial design major, so as an industrial design major, I think it definitely just helps me get a better idea. 3D printing is a really common rapid prototyping method that's used really frequently in industrial design, so having familiarity with that is always helpful.
I guess learning how to laser cut was one of my like big things that I was like really interested in, and I'm really happy that I'm working here at the studio because I wouldn't be able to have that experience anywhere else.
I learned how to solder. I learned how to just a lot of like electrical connection type stuff that as an industrial design major you don't learn any of.
Everyone is creative in their own way. So like having a space where it can expand it is really nice. So then that eventually can become a skill. And so I think like the prototyping space has so much things that like can help people.
So these 3 students and about 60 others work in and across our network of studios. So a quick bit of background about that. Beginning in 2016, the university libraries here at Tech began investing in the creation of what for us was a new type of learning environment. We call them studios. The term was meant to indicate both the particular type of open, accessible, adaptive spaces and services we wanted to create, but also the dynamic culture of peer-to-peer learning that is common to studios, and we wanted to emerge out of the spaces that we were building. The Studios Network has focused principally on emerging technologies, right? All the usual suspects, things like 3D printing and virtual reality, also digital media production tools and tools for idea prototyping. But more fundamentally, the studios are really intended to lower existing barriers to students engaging with technology, regardless of departmental or disciplinary affiliation, and through that, ultimately collaborating with one another in new ways. So these spaces are really driven by students learning from each other and by learning by doing, which going back to 2014 when these studios were first beginning to be planned, this was just beginning to be promoted institutionally and across higher ed as experiential learning, right? Which I will have more to say about if there's time in a little bit. So as much as they were about providing access to cutting edge technologies, the studios are anchored by a service model that both focuses on students and is driven by them. And what this meant in beginning in 2016 was that we were suddenly in the business of hiring dozens of students to be both the public face of these new spaces and the engine behind their services. So of roughly 230 students that the library employs, the studio utilizes about 1/4 of them. So fast forward 6 or so years, in the fall of last year in 2021, we opened the prototyping studio, which you see a picture of here. As Max said, a sort of large scale fabrication and ideation space that is in many ways the culmination of our investment in the service model of the studios and a recognition of how we have recalibrated our approach to student labor in the library. So taking kind of a step back briefly, academic libraries in the United States employ somewhere around 25,000 student assistants every year, according to the National Center for Education. Whether as shelvers working a reference desk or service desk, or as research assistants, libraries are often one of the biggest employers of students on campus, typically just behind campus dining services. At least that's our case here at Tech. So, we as a field are very good at utilizing student labor in what I would argue is a largely transactional fashion, right? But as a place of learning, situated conceptually, if not physically, at the heart of an institution predicated not just on education, but increasingly marketed to potential students as an essential first step in securing a career. How might we intentionally and mindfully better equip students to embark down those career paths, right? So this presentation really began with a question that all three of us have engaged in some fashion, and that is, what do libraries owe the students that work for us and with us? Can we do more than what we're doing? And I just say that you know, it bears pointing out the obvious, that students' relationship to work is it's complex, it's multifaceted. You know, as I said today, work during college is often framed as an expected component of gaining employable skills or depth for work after graduation. For a great number of students, though, you know, it's more immediately a way of paying the bills in college. Again, the National Center for Education Statistics reported in 2018 that 43% of full-time undergraduates were employed, and nearly 81% of part-time undergraduates were employed. But this, I think this balancing act of studying, of paying bills, of minimizing debt, you know, perhaps caring for family members or children, and at the same time cultivating employability, you know, things we probably all know something about, is rarely surfaced and talked about at great length within the context of the library. So one of the claims of this presentation, I was going to say implicit, but I guess if I'm saying it, it's explicit, is that the discourse on student labor in libraries needs to shift from a focus on transactional labor to what our professional culture and community, as imperfect as it can be at times, can do to support student employee success, skill growth, and well-being. Now, this is not in and of itself a radical thesis. We're certainly informed by and building off of the work of recent studies from folks like Charlene Maxey Harris, Joseph Everett, and Marissa Bishop, Jill Markgraf, Kay Odinda, and Jennifer Hunter, among others, all of whom grapple with the subject of student employment in academic libraries. But taken together and in our own experience here, it's clear that academic libraries need librarians who are skilled managers of students. I suspect that the bulk of core MILS curricula, information studies, often fail to adequately prepare librarians to take on that role. And I'd love to hear other perspectives in the Q&A. Certainly that has been my experience, first even as a graduate student, then as a branch head, and anecdotally it's been the experience of many of those I have talked to. So of all the identities that students inhabit during their time at college, the role of library student worker is one that is rarely examined in detail. And you know, likewise, we often talk about our roles professionally in regards to teaching or in proximity to teaching and research faculty. But in the work that we do as supervisors of student employees, we are perhaps more closely aligned, I think, with areas like student success, student affairs, academic coaching and tutoring, and so forth. And you know, while this alignment certainly poses its own questions about our own training and the role of mentorship to students in the work that we do, I do think we find ourselves capable of making unique connections between the educational mission of the university in which we work on the one hand, and that of the lived realities and needs of working students. And that sort of atmosphere needed and derived out of the work of the studios is what Jonathan is going to talk about.
Yeah. We'll jump to the next slide. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about how across our programs, we have been thinking about the employment that we offer to students in a very specific context. And what we've decided we want to do is build a reflection of what it's like to work at a company or something along those lines, the sorts of places where our students are going to get jobs when they leave here. A lot of times, you know, the students are here to get certain types of jobs that are going to lead them into a specific context, but the work that they often do for libraries or dining services or whoever it might be on campus is more transactional in nature. They go to work, they do a very specific task, and then they go home. We're trying to give them a sense of not only like, this is what it's like to work collaboratively, this is what it's like to have a career path that you're building through our spaces, but we are trying to reflect the job that they're hoping to get. And so how do we do that? The first way we do is the way we promote within the studios. So within the studios, the first thing we do is we follow what is presented to us by the university as a series of levels of student employment. And I have those sort of listed over here to the right. There are 3 different levels, and what the requirements are for a student to have that particular type of job and what experience or skill sets they need are sort of presented there as well. There is also what are called steps. And so they can get raises for the extended period of time that they work for us. And so in general, every 2 semesters that they work for us, they get just a standard raise, regardless of whether or not they've gone through any sort of other promotional process. So our goal is that most of our students end up starting at level A. It's not true about all of them, but most of them do. But we make it very clear to them, even from the day that they start with us, that they have a path they can follow. There is promotion to level B, there's promotion to level C, and even if they choose to not pursue those promotions, they, just for working for us, being a good, consistent employee, they'll still get raises as they go along as sort of the appreciation of, you know, your time spent with us, because not everybody wants to take on additional responsibilities for the extra money that's associated with it. So at our first level, most of our students are service point workers. They're the ones who are at a particular studio or space waiting to help whoever it is that might come up, to answer questions, to provide whatever technology it is in that particular space to that patron. The students who start doing that work but want to go further in their work and this particular field that they're trying to study can often ask us about level 2. And in level 2, the students are expected to do consultations. They're expected to offer workshops on particular emerging technologies that are associated with the space that they manage. So these students are usually become experts in particular pieces of technology. It's not uncommon for one of these students to learn so much about a particular piece of hardware or software that they know more about it than we do. And so they cultivate some sort of expertise. Sometimes they come with it, sometimes they develop it on the job just out of their own personal interests, but they sort of take to building these skills and want to share that knowledge. When students make that jump to teaching and providing consultations, they get training from us. They have extended sort of consultations with their managers to talk about, do you think you're ready for this? And what it's like to teach. They have the offer to co-teach workshops or have one of their managers sit in on a consultation that they're offering for somebody to get them prepared and have some training for doing that. Our level C is more of our specialized work. And so a lot of the students who go into level C are going into highly technical work. And so the students who fix our 3D printers or build them from the kits when we order them usually fall into this level C. And so students sometimes come in with a desire to be level C. Others, over their time working for us, and particularly working in a service point or something, may decide they want to move into that realm and ask for training to reach level C, at which point they usually work with their manager and other students who are already at that level. It's very common for a student who is teaching, who's already working in a level C position in a studio to be training who's going to sort of take over that work when they graduate. Which is a very common sort of thing that we have to worry about when it comes to students, because they're all here for a limited amount of time. Level C also encompasses some more specialized work. The internships that we have, and I'll talk about here in a moment, they usually fall into this level C category. So our training process, though, what does this look like for our students? How do we try to build them up professionally? So all of our students have a yearly training that they have to take on. It's before the start of the fall semester. The students come in before the semester starts. and they meet the managers. They learn about all of the spaces that we have as sort of an overview. We do consider ourselves sort of a network. We want our students to understand not just their own space, but the others. For various reasons, some of which that benefit us, the students can cover shifts, they can answer questions about what goes on, they can refer people to other studios where appropriate. And so having that knowledge of everything that's going on can be very beneficial. On that same day that they come in and they get their sort of overview of our general policies and all the spaces and our mindset, they also get some more specific training on what we call their home studio. All the students are usually hired out of their own personal interest. They express towards a particular studio. The vast majority of their regular hours are in that space. But they have the option to work in the other spaces as well. And over the years, we've had multiple students who started in a particular space and decided to shift to a different one out of their own interests or because they learned more about a service that they didn't really understand or know about beforehand. So the students get this more detailed training from their manager related to their home studio so that they know sort of more of the ins and outs of the daily working of that studio. Then we have sort of an ongoing training program that comes through our knowledge base. And I'll dive into that a little bit more later as well. But essentially, if a student is going to cover a shift, we like to have them revisit their training. It's very hard if you were trained one day at the beginning of the semester and then went off and had classes, had a life, had work for months to come back and remember, oh yeah, I need to remember to flip this sign and change this over and greet people a certain way or do X and Y. And so our knowledge base acts as both a place for people to get quick answers about things, but also sort of like refresher training for our students to help the ongoing process of keeping up to date. It's also great after the summer. Students who've worked here for an extended period of time can just go sort of reference and see, oh yeah, I forgot about that thing that we normally do when we close. So that's a little bit about how we go training across all the studios. Max is going to talk a little bit about his specific studio and the unique training that he offers to his students.
So in my prototyping studio, we have a role specifically called the consultants. And in embracing this idea of professional development, we use kind of the guise of training for customer service in our space and patron training as a way to make them better communicators and be more empathic to their coworkers. So really the core of this curriculum is really communication. And what we want each student to feel is not just comfortable engaging with the public, but also engaging with how they talk to each other and how they talk with me. Most of that customer service entails like improv training and conflict navigation and being willing to listen and then offer criticisms. We want students to think about how they've felt when they've dealt with customer service or office hours or the different things that they've definitely run into at this point in their life, and then both the good and the bad things. And usually me and my colleagues who are training this are guiding their conversations through this work. So we have them explain times where they've had good customer service. Then we have them break down why was that good customer service. And then we try to run them through scenarios on practicing that good customer service. And then equally so, we look at times that there was bad customer service and talk about why was that bad. And the root of a lot of this is just good communication, good speaking, and really good listening. And it starts growing this kind of inherent empathy to the way you think about interacting with the public and interacting with patrons. The inclusivity training really starts at the hiring. If you are well advertising your pools, as we feel like we've gotten to, we get a diverse set of applicants with lots of experiences and lots of interests. So when you start this training, you get inputs from all walks, and people immediately start recognizing my thought process on this is not the only thought process of this. And so we're trying to get them to hit into those different mindsets, to start reflecting with each other about their peers' experiences. And this often leads to conversations of how do you feel included? When do you not feel included? How do you make a space feel more included? And the whole goal here is to get them asking, how do we want to be included in our spaces, and how do we reach those goals with how we interact with our peers and other students and patrons? And so those skills transfer into how our space ends up being viewed and how people feel like they can come into our spaces. Because in my space, it's a pretty technical space. It's kind of a makery environment, a creation environment, a lot of technical tools. Inclusivity is hard, if you're not an engineer, if you're not in certain arts programs. So trying to get business majors and English majors into a space you have to work hard for that sort of target. So the feel of the space is a big important part of this. And then the next part is really to teach them how to give feedback, give criticism, and receive both of those things. And that training is not only just to be good consultants and be good, referencers, but also so that they are good communicators with me. I need them to understand that I expect to be criticized, and I expect to hear feedback from what they do that doesn't feel like it works. And building that trust and comfort really grows their communication skills. And this is what really is a pillar of what makes them a good worker in the future, that they feel empowered to communicate with their bosses and with their peers when they see something that doesn't seem to be working. The last bit for these particular students is we give them kind of some project management experience. We build a curriculum around working on personal projects that are to some service to the space. They build up some aspect, whether it's how we take in jobs for a queue or how people learn how to use tools in our space. And the biggest thing I'm trying to teach there is scope. Project scope in particular, because a lot of people have not had time in their academic careers to really manage a project on their own and hit the scope of their project. They start out with really big pie in the sky ideas and then don't realize that that's maybe kind of out of the cards for the amount of time they have for it. So the big goal there is just really to have them understand the limitations of their time and capabilities in a space so that they feel better and more successful when they do start working towards and completing projects. And also what teaches them to ask for help when they know they're going to need help and not just try to jam in the last minute all the work that they still need to do. So what's the next part?
Yeah. So our next topic is a little bit about student growth as operational growth. We found, and we're going to talk a little bit about it, how working with our students to try to professionalize them has actually done a great deal to allow us to grow what we are capable of. I mean, we're a fairly small team in comparison. Our students' numbers dwarf us in terms of the number of employees we have working in the unit. And by working to train them and professionalize them, we've drastically extended the number of things that we're capable of doing in the spaces. So the first thing I'm going to talk in more detail about is our knowledge base. So our knowledge base is a Canvas course. I have a screenshot of it up here, one of the pages from there, where we keep our documentation. And it contains videos, documents, infographics, and things about FAQs and stuff that's valuable for students. There's also patron-facing documents in here, like our digitization guides for things like vinyl and VHS. But I want to emphasize that everything in here is made by a student. We look it over and make sure that it is accurate and that just sort of check it for things like accessibility and stuff like that. But the students make these things. And if this task had been left up to the managers, the people who are working in the spaces, we wouldn't have been able to make this. So we are in a very real degree relying on the students to create the training that they'll continue to use and the future student workers that we have will continue to use. And another thing that has helped us greatly in terms of expanding what we're capable of doing is our internship program. So this program was newly established in 2021. Currently, we have 5 paid internships that operate through the Studios Network here at the University Libraries. The 5 positions are a technical professional writing position, a marketing and promotion position, packaging design, IoT development, and creative technologies. The image over there on the right is some promotional material that was students made for one of our events. And they are allowing us to do things that we just simply don't have the time to do. Most of these internships have come out of a need within the space. We need to make more documentation, or we need someone to review our documentation and make sure that it is clear and able to be understood by even a novice. We need someone to promote these spaces more so than we have time to do. And by taking some time to work with a department and hire students and treat them like they were doing a job, we are able to handle a lot more tasks that we wanted to do, but were just sort of falling by the wayside previously. So that's a little bit about how we've professionalized sort of overall, but Max is going to give you a few more details about things that he's doing specifically in his spaces.
So I look at student design learning is what I titled the slide, and it's really the big bulk of what this block is supposed to be, that student growth is operational growth. If you let your students, who are a workforce that is super intelligent, they're here to learn, they're here to engage, they're not here because they could have gotten a job to do A to B type tasks. They're here because they want to learn about things. And it's so easy, and it feels like it should be intuitive to embrace that interest, to learn more and engage more. And so when your students come to you and they say, hey, this thing is a thing that I've been doing, how does that work? It sounds like this. Just explaining is maybe a disservice, because in the hindsight, it kind of seems like a teach a man to fish or give a man a fish situation, where if you teach them about it and let them engage at their interest level, it almost always ends up expanding the service in some way, even if that thing is just making promotional material or flyers, or as much in my space as developing curriculum around how to use a tool that seems intimidating or dangerous. And it's things that you might not have ever thought of in your capacity as maybe a solo manager or a small team of faculty and staff to be able to engage with, but your students saw it as a thing they wanted to know about. If your student sees it, then other students will see it, so engage with it. And it just expands upon the spaces. Building those projects, then it gives ownerships to your students, and giving ownership to your student workers gives ownership to the students that interact with your space. If they come into a space and they see these services that were designed by their peers, that were designed with their kind of mindset involved, they immediately go, oh, okay, this is a thing that we're building. And then they get engaged and also want to use the things that your students have developed and designed for. And then kind of most importantly here, these projects and embracing the students' willingness to engage with what seems like maybe the nuts and bolts of your service, they're developing learning tools. They're teaching themselves and gaining some level of mastery and understanding with aspects of your service, and then incorporating it into their own interests usually, or their own major sometimes. And then that results in effectively learning objects for your patrons, because when a patron comes in and then asks about that, you have a student that's doesn't just know about this thing, they've learned it and taught it, whether they're willing to think about it that way or not. So yeah, I just see engaging in the ownership of your students on a space is paramount to this kind of learning on the ground level. So in this kind of final block, we're going to talk about how we use failures as learning and reflection. We wouldn't be here today with what we've grown to without looking at our failures and using those as our stepping off point for the next part, the next iteration of our designs. The first thing to embrace is kind of failure as a framework. The biggest tool for your success can be learning from these things. And if you provide space for that failure in your curriculum, you're going to provide space for learning and opportunities. So like when we pick furniture for our spaces, I try to always pick a minimal amount because I know our perspective for how a space will be used and our intended use case is probably going to be a little askew, if not outright wrong. And if we pack in with, you know, one-time use furniture that would then be hard to get rid of or hard to work around, we've limited ourselves flexibility and ability to really tailor our spaces to what our patrons need and what our service staff, our people who are working for us, can use. For our students, we need them to know how to embrace failure because we want them to learn from it and not hide from it. Failure to this point for a lot of our students means a bad grade, or it's very negative, you know, it's something to be shunned almost. So if we embrace failure as a transition point, as how are we continuing from here and keep working towards our goal, they stop seeing failure as I did this wrong and I need to, you know, hide it as long as I can or skirt it somehow. They come to you and tell you, so we tried this, it didn't really work. This is what I'm thinking now. They'll have solutions prepared sometimes. And if they don't, you can show them, usually as, you know, the person who is their supervisor and has time to maybe think hierarchically more, there are more solutions. This is not the end all be all of things. And I mean, I think some people will say, well, there are some things that just can't fail. But if you get into the practice of it, are there a lot of things that really just can't fail? I mean, we're not in medicine here, you know, we're in academia, we're trying to expand upon knowledge. So our failures can be learning, and that's really a kind of a blessing of the situation we're in. But now that we're in like a mindset of we're accepting all paths to success, we're accepting that our failures are also successes, everything is a path to the right answer. Absolute autonomy and absolute freedom is just kind of paralyzing. It's not good enough to say, this is our goal and reach it by any means necessary. We need to give constraints. We need to give boundaries to these ideas, because without those, there's no conflict in, well, I could do this, but then that would stop me. So I need to move on to an idea. They're just going to keep moving to, I guess I could do this, but where do I go from there? And there's a certain paralysis to that where you can't get any farther. So you have to build constraints into your goals and your milestones for your students. But those need to be agreements. Think of it as the post and rope of constraints, because not everyone will bounce up against them. Some people will find a way around them that still works for their goal. And you need to let them know that these are things that are guiding us, but are not requisite, and they're not completely required. They're just there to help us get from our initial idea to our final goal. And so giving absolute autonomy, absolute freedom is going to give us too much room to fail and learn. It won't ever lead to a true goal. So understanding that these constraints that we're putting on our students are flexible, again, leads back to communication, that when they do have problems or need guidelines, they're going to be willing to come to you because they understand that the constraints you're placing on them are agreed upon constraints that can be discussed. And then a quote that I heard from a local businessman, they hate hiring workers just out of college. And it was out of an irritation for being the first boss for these students, and that they have to teach them how to be able to talk and how to work with some level of autonomy and without direct supervision. And I like to just take this time to say it's good to be the first boss. You set the bar. I would rather hear back from my students that say like, man, I'm so glad I got to work for you because this happened. And now I understand what you were trying to do. But that's feedback to me, because some of the times they weren't prepared for a world where they didn't get freedom with a line of communication. But the big thing I see these days that is disregarded in kind of the student realm of success is respecting time. When assignments are given, especially by professors that don't communicate with each other, it's often at disregard for how much time it might take a student. So as their first boss, teaching the students that they need to be clocked in when they're doing work, even if that work is mostly of personal interest and not just to service our space, that their time is valuable and they need to learn to respect their time. Investing in their interests, invest in the service. It goes back to the student growth is operational growth. Teach them that their interests are what builds retention in their job. People, in our spot might understand that you have to kind of invest in your job to learn to love your job. And students have no idea of that. They've mostly been entry level. And then turning these grades and hard interests into milestones instead. Teach them that the mentality in a career is more of moving towards a goal and then following through, not that it's a definitive stop point and you either succeeded or you didn't. And that goes back to frameworks of failure, that you can get to a milestone and maybe didn't get to it the way you wanted to, but you can continue moving on. And so from the ground level, that's kind of what I see and how I interact with things. Jonathan's going to expand a little bit more on the programmatic level of these issues.
We're going to jump through this pretty fast. So we tried at one point in time to train all of our students to work in every studio. This idea that we want them to be able to cover shifts and stuff. And so I have a diagram up on the right-hand side. And the question that comes out of this is, if you were taught this one day before a semester and then you didn't think about it for 2 months, do you think you'd be able to hook this back up later? I think for most of us, the answer is no. And that is what we found, was the students were making mistakes. They were having to be retrained. And so what we were doing was like overloading them though in those early days, which is why one of the reasons why the knowledge base, and this is actually a document from the knowledge base, sort of came out of that. We also learned not to sort of ask specialized work from students who we weren't expecting to specialize. So giving students additional jobs that they could do that were sort of, you can work extra hours and you can do this more complicated thing. Students are busy. When push comes to shove and it's exam time, they're just going to do the thing that they sort of are used to doing, that comes easy to them. And that's fair. It's not fair for you to be upset with them because they don't want to take on like something that's more complex. And this is a lot of where the internship program came out of, and finding students to do a very specific task that we needed done and having them focus on just doing that task and not spreading our students' sort of knowledge and talents too thin. So do you want to jump into experiential learning, or should we just go straight to questions?
Yeah, I want to be cognizant of time. And so I really just wanted to say that, like, many universities, Virginia Tech has focused a lot of attention and resources over the past 5 or 7 years on experiential learning. A screenshot here from the experiential learning pages of the university. These often take the form of bridge experiences like undergraduate research, internships, other place-based experiences. They're driven by high impact practices framework from the Association of American Colleges and Universities. But really, the point here was just to draw attention to the ways in which although we've experienced honestly some pushback in officially designating some of this work as experiential learning in the eyes of the university, the experiential learning framework, and if you want to go to the next slide, here's Kolb's cycle of experiential learning with ingredients like experimentation and reflection have been useful, not only signposts for our training, but talking points for university and library administration in terms of the framework and scaffolding we're erecting around student training and so forth.
So we're going to try to have more internships moving forward. We're going to try to make more videos for our knowledge base. We sort of held off during the pandemic of recording things in person. And we're going to try to promote more students to our consultations and teaching workshops because it's been going really well so far. So that's where we plan to go from here. So now we'll jump over to questions. All right. So the first question we have, which we'll answer live, is can you expand on how you assess student work growth? Do you match your studio assessment learning goals to campus or national learning outcomes? I think in general, we're more focused on the campus learning outcomes and the campus's definition of experiential learning. That is also a thing we've been working on, though. E-portfolios is a thing that Max has been trying to integrate the work that his students are doing. And I think that's one of the future things that we want to do a little bit more, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's it's a thing that we need more support than just our students trying to support themselves is ultimately getting them into the practice of recording these things is helpful. And that was the hope for seeing growth, is seeing how they develop their projects throughout.
Let's see, the next question. We work in a unionized environment where we have to be very careful not to assign work to students that belong in the full-time staff job fact sheet. Any advice on how to expand opportunities for student staff while overstepping into the unionized work territory? So one thing I would say is build your environment. Even if you can't have them do the specific jobs, make sure that you are treating them in terms of the way they look at the job as a career, that there's some sort of progression for them, that they are treated like an employee who has the opportunity to give feedback, to think about their path through it. But I'll also say, Patrick, do you have any thoughts on that? I haven't dealt with unions very much.
No, I think, you brought up the point earlier that our staffing is pretty lean across the studios,
Yeah.
which makes enabling students to take on greater levels of responsibility and creativity, makes our situation perhaps a little bit easier. But I think it is important to delineate, sort of like you were saying, and create that environment in which expectations, at the end of the day, are clear.
I don't know, Max, you got any ideas on how to deal with?
No, I was just thinking about how we we kind of thrive on the ability of letting students take on work that would be, I think the word that gets like scared of is paraprofessional level work for students. And I mean, we have run into that in some cases where at the university where people have gone, should you set that as an expectation? Or should it be something that's grown into? And we've tried to not set as an expectation because we don't want to take away jobs from people that would be moving in for full-time work. But I think there's also an opportunity there to have, it's almost like collaborative work where they take on assistantship roles, where they are helping with that work to the full-time person, but not owning the work. It's kind of how I view grad students working with their mentors, and the mentors are there to advise that work and help that work happen, but the ownership is shared. So I don't know if that's a solution, but
I mean, you also may talk with the union about getting students somehow involved in that. Like the way it works now, like more and more job companies are expecting the students to come out of college with somehow having 9 years of experience working. And it's not practical. And so like students need to work, they need to do something that looks good for them. And like if you're going to be a college that is trying to like help your students set them up for success, I mean, I think it's fair to try to argue that they should have some place in that. Maybe it's not the same place, but some sort of ability to take on some of these roles, with that your union would be, I guess, positively disposed to letting them take on, sort of thing. But yeah. The next question we have is, are you helping students translate what they are doing to their resumes, cover letters, and job applications? That's a great question. So we teach workshops about setting up your professional career, and we require that our students attend a certain number of workshops, and so some of them attend those. They also very much ask us about like how they should list the work that they do on their resumes, and so we can talk to them about it. And I've even had students who were graduating send me their resume and ask me to look over it, and I'm happy to do that sort of thing. And I feel like you've probably been asked the same thing.
Yeah, anything that they've done that they don't recognize as a skill, I always try to point it out. It's like, this is a skill, this is a skill you can advertise that you are, capable and proficient in.
Yeah, because they don't always recognize that.
Right.
The next question we have, how does your institution support departments who have student employees? I mean, I assume you mean like Virginia Tech supporting departments. So we have some documentation. We have some standard training that's sort of required, like Title IX, working with minors and stuff like that, that the institution sort of as a whole provides that we use for some of our student training. And most of the individual training and we get some guidelines like the pay guidelines, which are intended to try to keep the university from competing with itself, I think is the goal of that, but also allows the university to sort of set those minimum pays, and it's been increasing sort of as a requirement, which I think is for the best. Other than that, it's mostly been up to us, unless y'all are aware of some stuff that's
it's mostly internal. I mean, I know we try to include student workers on like climate committees, as well as, you know, salary wage talks, and steering there was the Dean's Advising Council had student people.
Yeah, I think
every time.
that's almost like a presentation in its
Yeah,
own right. I think
that's a whole
over the
can of
past,
worms.
well, you know, in the past couple of years, I think it was sort of accelerated by COVID in a way. I think we have made as a library a concerted effort to include wage employees and student assistants within that in, like you said, climate surveys, and really to amplify their voice within the infrastructure, I guess, of and governance, if that's the right word, of the library and policy decisions.
So the next question we got, I mainly employ health sciences graduate students who are a very particular career path. How do you think I can still cultivate employability since they're very different than undergrad students? I mean, I think part of it is what we've talked about before of like making the atmosphere and the environment they're working in more reflective of the sort of environment that they're hoping to end up in as much as you can as possible. And then I mean, carving out a place for them to do some of that work. You know, it does take a bit of creativity to say, what could a student do for us that would be beneficial, that in some way, shape, or form ties to the work they want to do. And it may be teaching. And so like I had a GA who he works through the virtual environment studio. He wants to work for Microsoft working on hardware, but he taught for us and he learned how to teach and he's good at it. And he never would have thought that was a thing that would benefit him, but he's now seeing it on applications and stuff as he starts looking at the job market, and they don't always realize that. So I think finding those opportunities and just being open to letting them propose opportunities as well that you might not have thought of. Great. So the next question we have, in my experience, providing the depth of experiential learning you all have in your program is challenging. The larger amount of students, employees is for each supervisor. Do you all have a sense of what is the ideal number of student employees to have success with models like yours? Or are there strategies you all employ to scale with what you are doing to a larger group of student employees?
And here you might want to talk about our secret weapon.
Yeah, our secret weapon, Ellen.
Ellen.
So all of our students, while they have a manager who sort of oversees their day-to-day and trains them on their specific studio, they all report to one person. And we did that very consciously. We were having a lot of trouble with sort of communicating across these different jobs with one manager who hired some people and, well, can anyone cover my studio for this? And we brought them all under the same umbrella. And Ellen is amazing. She schedules, she looks at their schedules and she finds them. She's also gotten so good at interviewing students that it's amazing to me that she'll sit in an interview with a student and go, that will be a great student. And like 95% of the time she's correct. So I think that's part of it. Max, you got.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, it used to be heavily under my position to manage a lot of juggling students. And then we hired Ellen to help with that. So what I've ID'd is offloading all of that has let me really engage with the students directly and engage in my part of their growth in my space and not have to, you know, also engage with kind of higher admin stuff. But the engaging of characters, yeah, that definitely Ellen's strength. And we often hire on enthusiasm more than skill set, because when your students are enthusiastic about the work they want to do, it's much easier to manage a group of them because you don't have to, you don't have to really support the unengaged. Everyone is there to be there and to be interested.
So I think we might be out of time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna quickly type out answers to the rest of these, but yeah, we appreciate everybody coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of the conference.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick, Jonathan, Max. Please be sure to fill out a conference or a session evaluation and schedule. I'm also dropping a quick link. It's very messy into the chat. And yes, thank you very much. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the conference.
See the chat.
Let's save it.
Great work. Did you capture the questions? Did you want to do that?
Yeah, if we can. I think we got one of them, we sort of answered in the process of answering another one, but I think I either sent a typed message or we answered all of them live, but I would like to have the questions because they're all, I think, relevant if we can.
Let me see if I can really do a quick copy. And I will shoot you all an email with those questions.
Okay, that would be great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Great. I'm going to stop the recording and end the session.
Thanks, Shanti.